Yeah, thank you so much for having us. I think I'll kick it off, talk a little bit about the CoE Starter Kit, and then hand it over to Mike to talk about some of the ALM components that are part of it. If I lose my train of thought halfway through the presentation, apologies. I'll get back onto it. It's like 10:30 where I am in the evening. So yeah, I've had a long day already, I guess. But yeah, it's a topic I talk about frequently, so hopefully we'll be okay. And yeah, thanks so much for having me. Hopefully this presentation will be interesting. And please feel free to yell at me kind of throughout the presentation if you have any questions, or put them in the chat window. I've got it on my second screen so I can read them out. I'll provide an overview of the CoE Starter Kit, and I've got a few demos ready. So hopefully we'll be a little bit more like I don't want to just kind of kill it with like just walking through slides. I really wanted to give you an overview of what it's like to kind of use the kit, like either kind of yourself if you're a customer, or if you're a partner working with customers, how you can kind of inform them on using the kit. So yeah, we'll briefly talk about why we have the CoE kit, what's in the CoE kit, and then as a handover to Mike, we'll talk about how we ship the CoE Starter Kit, and then Mike will talk about the ALM accelerators. So my name is Manuela. I'm part of the PowerApps Customer Advisory team at Microsoft. We're a small team within Power Platform Engineering, and we work with some of our marquee and strategic customers on making them successful in adopting the Power Platform. Typically, that kind of covers working with customers who are looking at adopting the platform at enterprise scale. So they're not just looking at building one solution or a few solutions with it. It's really about a motion to kind of enable a large base of citizen developers to use the Power Platform. As part of that work, we get a lot of like tricky questions around, how does it work when everyone can create apps? How do I identify what's highly used, what could be risky? How do I prevent that sprawl? How do I keep my data secure? And then at the same time, kind of how do I help everyone be productive with the platform? How do I identify champions and maybe, create a career path for them and make sure that they don't operate in a silo or become, isolated in their success? Like, how can I highlight the success that they have? And similarly, how can I connect them to other makers that are maybe only just starting out, and make sure that people who are showing an interest in the platform receive the right level of support as they're going on their journey and becoming a maker that's building, more intermediate or advanced solutions. I think that's, everyone who's built an app or a flow knows that you will reach a point where you need help. And some of us, self-serve that information from the community, but there's tons of others who kind of get stuck and then think that, oh, this is too difficult, I can't do it, and then kind of go back to their manual processes. Like, how can I, identify those scenarios as well and keep growing people there. So some of those questions we kind of get very frequently from our customers. And obviously, like when it comes to rolling out the Power Platform, it's often seen as a technical project that's led by like the Power Platform admin or a CIO or an IT team. But really, it's an organizational change project. It's about changing the culture to get people interested in IT, get them interested in seeing that they can own their own digital transformation and that it's not something that's done to them anymore. So there's a lot of challenges when it comes to that. Some of them are, yes, of course, technical. A lot of them are to do with cultural changes, org changes. And the CoE Starter Kit was really created to provide a starting point to help organizations with some of these challenges and show customers kind of how best practices can be implemented. And it's also a way to share learnings with them. So administer the Power Platform, you've obviously got the existing tools like the Admin Center, extensibility via connectors, via PowerShell, so customers can create their own tooling approaches. And the CoE Starter Kit, we see it as a templatized implementation of best practices. And really the way it started out was learning from customers what they've done to administer the platform, and that goes back, I think it's like 2.5 years ago now, seeing what other customers have done, putting that into a templatized format and shipping it as the CoE Starter Kit. And over the past 2 years, it's grown with the knowledge of what customers are doing. So it's a toolkit that is really close to customer experience, and every enhancement that you see in our new releases, everything is influenced by what we've heard from customers there. So, but yeah, at the kind of on the flip side, that it's a starter kit. Like every organization is different. There's no one size fits all approach to Power Platform adoption, kind of all up, and therefore there's no one size fits all approach to governance or to establishing a center of excellence. So really some of the tools in the kit are more designed to be that starting point, that template, to provide inspiration for an organization to build their own processes with it, to extend it, to make it like sometimes the real power of the kit only comes to life when an organization really embraces it and makes the kit their own to fit with their existing organizational processes or where their kind of vision of adopting the platform is. If you're not familiar with the kit at all, I'll show some of the components after this slide. I think typically the way I talk about the architecture of the kit is that it has a foundation of information about your tenants' Power Platform usage that's collected in Dataverse. So there's a table there that holds information about all of the apps that are in your organization that's across environments, about all of your environments, your makers, all of the connectors and how they're used. So there's this like Dataverse tables that kind of hold all of the inventory, information about your telemetry, like how apps are used. And then organization data, I mean, further information about your makers, like what departments are they from, what job titles do they hold, what city or country are they from, to really help kind of build those reports that show you which departments have kind of high Power Platform usage, where are your champions, etc. So and that's collected in those Dataverse tables. And then on top of that, we build different experiences. So that's apps, flows, Power BI dashboards, Teams adaptive cards. We've started using more recently. And broadly, the experiences target 3 different personas. One of them is obviously the admin persona, and that's where most of the CoE kit kind of experiences lie. And that the target is really to make the admin life easier, kind of provide them with either like a holistic overview of what's going on in their tenant, or make decisions, allow them to make decisions easier, or allow things like bulk editing things. So for example, bulk updating the ownership of applications to another person. Then there's maker experiences, and what we mean by that is like in an organization, I'm a Power Platform maker, and there are some CoE apps targeted at my persona. And then in the context of the CoE, a lot of these experiences are really making the communication between the admin and the maker easier. So it's a tool, for example, to request a new environment from an admin. So I don't have to like email them or ping them to say, oh, I need a new environment, or I have to do all my work restricted in the default environment if that's the only one I have access to. So really kind of streamlining that process, taking away some of that manual effort. And that is one of the solutions that I'll demo in a bit as well. And then a limited amount of applications in the CoE kit are like targeted at everyone in the organization. One of those is an innovation, we call it the innovation backlog. Some customers renamed it to Ideas Hub. It's a place to submit ideas of what could be built with the Power Platform, to kind of say, well, I don't have the skills at the moment to do that, but I have like a really complex invoicing process, and I think that could be improved from what I've heard about the Power Platform. So something like that. And then the other one is an app catalog, where as an admin, I can highlight applications that are relevant for the entire organization. So something like a leave system, or like if I host kind of internal training days or conferences, those type of apps that are relevant to the entire organization, I could highlight them in an app catalog, kind of like an app store for Power Apps internally to make it more targeted what users can see. So yeah, that's kind of the three target personas in the CoE. It's obviously kind of the goal is like that a Power Platform admin installs it and sets it up, and they would get started kind of getting familiar with the apps that target their personas, and then kind of grow their usage into like maybe other areas. So something that I guess sometimes when I talk to customers, they see it as like an all or nothing approach, and the CoE Starter Kit definitely isn't that. You can install it and only use a certain part of it. And if the only thing that you use is to get a holistic overview of your inventory, that probably gives you huge value already, and you don't have to touch any of the other parts of the kit. And part of it is also about like your maturity in a way where once you're familiar with your inventory, you then might want to dive into some of the other aspects of the kit, like looking at automating your environment requests, looking at archiving things that aren't used anymore, and using the automations in the kit around that. So there's definitely like that learning curve and that maturity growth that comes with the kit as well. So let me start by showing fingers crossed to the demo gods now. So I'll show the Power BI dashboard because I often consider it to be kind of the heart of the CoE kit. And then I'll demo certain apps that are part of the kit as well. And if there's any that you've kind of like maybe seen in our documentation that you're interested in seeing a demo of, I can hopefully pull that up as well. Let me make that a little bit larger. So the Power BI dashboard combines all the knowledge that the CoE kit gathers about your tenants, or like your inventory, telemetry, and maker data into a collection of by now 40 pages. And the reason there's so many is because many customers want to ask kind of different questions about their data. So we've just provided a lot of different views, like slicing and dicing the data into kind of different views there to provide a lot of answers to questions. So something that I as a Power Platform admin have set up this dashboard, and I probably get a lot of questions from other people in my organization about Power Platform adoption. So a service manager or operations manager might come to me and ask, are there any apps in the default environment that are highly used or highly shared that might need the support of more robust support than is provided in the default environment? So one of the pages in the dashboard, I can, filter it to the default environment. I can see the sessions and unique users that this application has, and in theory, this could be like a larger number. And I might then, make a decision to reach out to that maker and say, you know what, we've identified your highly used application. We don't think the default environment is the right place for it. Let's move it somewhere else. Similarly, you might get approached by your procurement department, and they might want to know who are those departments that are using the premium capabilities of the Power Platform, because we want to cross-charge them. So there's an app license assessment in here where you can dive into the connector tier, and then into premium. You can look at the maker department, and you can see, the marketing team has 208 apps that are using premium capabilities. So I'm going to cross-charge them, perhaps like 50% of the license cost, because that's the number that they're taking up. And then you might have an information security team that's heard about the HTTP connector and is a little bit worried about the implications and wants to find out more about which makers are using that connector, what are they using it for. So you could look at your flow inventory and filter it down to only show, I pre-filtered it, but this has all the actions that are used in flows, and you can filter it down to only show flows that are using HTTP actions. You could say only show me started ones, and then you might have already dedicated and trusted environments. So you could then again kind of further filter it down to only include the default environment here and provide that list to the information security team. Both so they can talk to those makers if they want further information, but also to really prove that using the Power Platform doesn't increase shadow IT. It's actually the exact opposite. Like you've got full visibility of everything that's going on in your tenant, and you can query that data and provide answers to all the questions that that teams might have. And then kind of on the nurture side, you might have teams, or your leadership team might, be really interested in learning how the Power adoption all up is growing. And hopefully, if you're not doing this from a demo tenant, your adoption is much less erratic than than mine. So you'll be able to kind of show Maker growth over time, Power Apps MAU over time, the user base over time with those reports as well. And that's really targeted at, maybe presenting to your leadership team or an exec sponsor that has bought into the platform, that is really just interested in those high level numbers. So a good starting point typically for customers is to set it up and really get deeply familiar with the dashboard, especially if they've already got existing adoption. Obviously, if you're starting from scratch, this won't be relevant until you've got a bit of adoption going on. But many of our customers see sometimes viral or unexpected adoption in the default environment. So this is a really great starting point to see who are those people. Can I learn from them? How is the Power Platform used today, and how do I want it to be used tomorrow? So there's a lot to learn from kind of these reports there. And let's now go into some of the application demos. So a few months ago, we received feedback that it was very difficult kind of seeing what all the apps that are part of the CoE Starter Kit and seeing how they kind of come together and how everything is, how to keep up with it. So we launched this admin command center application, and we really see it as the starting point of using the CoE kit. So the first time you launch it, it collects information about, it creates bookmarks for all of the CoE applications. You can edit those and include additional links that you want there. So things like, for example, the Power BI dashboard that you publish to a workspace, we wouldn't have that information, so you can add that as a link. And from here, you can launch all of those applications. So you immediately have an overview of everything that the CoE kit comes with, and you can launch it from there. With the last release last week, we've also added information about the CoE Starter Kit solution that you have installed. So if that version is a little bit older, I think we've set it to 90 days. We recommend that you upgrade it, so you get kind of that notification if you go into the command center to learn about that, and you can download the latest version from there as well. And under support, again, it also highlights the CoE Starter Kit version. You can kind of navigate to the release from there and see that here. And you can also view the release notes directly within the application, so you don't have to navigate to GitHub. You can browse here through the changelog of everything that's changed with the latest release. I'm bragging a little bit because the January release was a big one for us. So we fixed a few well, there wasn't actually that many bugs. It was just a lot of features that we addressed with that release. The other things that are relevant in the admin command center is that you can use it as a place to keep up to date with the Power Platform all up. So we bring in, I'm not sure if I have that configured. Oh yeah, I do. So we bring in the message center information that's relevant for Power Platform. So the M365 message center, and you can see those updates there as well. We talked to a lot of Power Platform admins that aren't really aware of the M365 admin center and thus often miss those news, and sometimes they talk about service deprecations, etc. So that's really relevant here. And then maybe like less relevant and more for information, we do bring in the blog posts from all of our products, so you can kind of keep up to date with everything that's been announced recently. And through RSS feeds, we also bring in the release wave notes, so you can see when they've been updated last, and you can launch them from there as well. And that goes down to, this is filtered by when they've been edited, so you would see if anything new has been added, and you can launch that from there as well. And probably Learn is the other one that is maybe worth highlighting. And we share some of the MS Learn paths that are worth attending as an admin, so you can, through the CoE Kit and through the Admin Command Center, go on your upskilling journey as well. And then I guess the last place in this, in the Admin Command Center to highlight is that very recently, we've made it, one of the big frustrations for customers with the CoE Kit was the amount of editing that they had to do when they wanted to change emails. So we've introduced a table that holds all of the email texts, and you can edit them from here. You don't have to edit like flows anymore to update emails, and you can even localize them. So we do have an email that sends like a welcome to new makers. And many of our customers wanted to personalize that or localize it to their preferred languages. So they can now do that here, provide the this email template in like English, French, Spanish, German, etc. And it would get sent to the maker in their preferred language that's set in Office 365. So that's been a recent enhancement that we've made. So yeah, like we treat the command center now as kind of the glass pane into the CoE Kit. And everything that's new would be kind of announced as part of that. It's a really good starting point to explore the rest of the kit. And the other, let's leave that open. The other application that I wanted to highlight is the environment creation request application. So as customers scale their adoption, automation of admin tasks becomes more and more important, just so that they can scale their efforts. So this tool really helps with makers requesting environments for specific purposes, like a project that they're working on, and admins approving that. And there's actually two functionalities in this app. One is requesting environments, and the other one is requesting DLP changes to environments that I have access to. Let's raise a new one. So I would, when I request a new environment, I would immediately kind of specify the connectors that I want to use as part of that environment to inform the admin that these are my plans. I would specify who else I want to be, who else needs to be an admin of that environment. And then this interface is very similar to creating the an environment in the Public from Admin Center. So I'd give it a name. I can specify that I want to, for example, if I'm hosting a training event or a hackathon, I might want to automatically delete the environment after a specific time. So I can specify that here, and I can ask for a Dataverse instance to be added to that environment as well. I'll select no for both of those for now. And that form has now been submitted. So if I go to the admin view of the same application, I can probably see that I can see that request now. So I can see that this is pending. I can view the request, and it will immediately give me the information that I need about approving or rejecting that request. So I can see all of that information here. I can also see if there's a DLP policy already applied to that environment, and if the impact of that environment, if that the impact of that DLP policy is blocking the connectors that maker has requested. So in this case, I can see that there's a DLP policy called productivity. It's set to exclude certain environments, but the connectors that this policy allows don't have an impact on this environment, so I can probably leave that in place. I can review the connectors here, set a security group, add nodes, and if I approve the request here, the environment gets automatically created in the background, so I don't have to do any further steps. I can also view and modify the DLP policies from here to, for example, assign like another one that I already have to this environment, and add the environment to another DLP policy that I already have. So this one has been proving very useful to many of our customers. We've had, I guess before this was launched in the CoE Kit, we saw a few customers create this from scratch. So we've taken the steps to, make a template available to customers so they can, they don't have to start from scratch with processes like that. I'll go back presentation quickly. And then another process that we got a lot of feedback on is, we call it the compliance process. Really, it's about admins wanting to know more information about the apps and the flows that their makers are building to build kind of a bigger picture of those applications. So there is the compliance process that consists of a few different elements. So there's an email that goes out to the maker based on the criteria in their application. So for example, the app is like highly shared or highly used. It asks the maker for more information. The maker gets directed to a Canvas application that's called the Developer Compliance Center. They can see the status of their application and provide further information, such as the business justification, data classification details, access details, like which groups do have access to that data, support details, etc. Then the admin goes into a model-driven app with a business process flow, and that facilitates that auditing process. So the admin reviews what's been submitted, signs it off, marks the application, provides kind of a risk assessment on that application. And as like the last step, if that application is highly valuable, they would highlight it in the app catalog where end users can consume it. End users can request access to the application as well if they don't already have access. And we've recently added a feature to the app catalog so end users can leave a star rating and feedback on applications as well that makers can see, so they know kind of how their end users are finding the application and can improve it based on that feedback. So this is a process that's also been very useful to many of our customers. And I would say kind of it lended a lot of inspiration. So not everyone kind of implements it exactly as we have outlaid in the CoE Kit, but definitely a lot of customers with that with those templates kind of started thinking about the data that they want their makers to provide and how they started thinking about applications in like buckets of productivity, business important application, critical applications, etc. So that one that process overall has been useful for that. And then the innovation backlog, really we see it like really as a standalone application. It can be used without any of the other components of the CoE Kit, and really the purpose is for tracking both ideas but also value of applications once they've been developed. So as you start rolling out the Power Platform, some of the metrics may be around kind of numbers, like how many makers do I have, how many apps do I have. But I think the further the adoption goes along, the more customers really want to track the value of using the Power Platform. So the innovation backlog helps define measures around what problem has been solved with a specific solution, and attaches an ROI value to it that you then can kind of combine and obviously over a year look back on to see how much has been developed and how much ROI has been created through that. I think Mike alluded to it in the chat. We do ship the CoE Starter Kit monthly. We have the releases on GitHub, so you can see the entire changelog as part of the release, but we also track all of our feature asks and issues openly in GitHub issues. So we don't have an internal private backlog of things that we develop for the CoE Starter Kit. Everything is out in the open on GitHub. It really adds kind of transparency of what we're doing. And we encourage you to raise feature asks as well as issues on GitHub. And we do assign them to milestones. And yeah, each milestone is it's like monthly milestones for all of our releases. And yeah, everything that we do is on GitHub. And for the deployment, we use the ALM Accelerator tooling. We've got a development environment for each solution. All of that is then linked to pipelines, and the final release pipeline zips everything up, closes all the issues, and prepares the release and changelog, which Mike has implemented for the CoE team, and we're entirely grateful for it because it's been a pain before. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mike, who will talk more about the ALM Accelerator tooling.
So this is going to be primarily, I'm going to be doing a demo, but I did want to kind of level set initially on what the ALM Accelerator is. Manuela just rattled off, at least I think there's 6 solutions in the CoE Starter Kit, and being able to, maintain those, to release those, to test those. There's a huge ALM effort involved in that, and I think Manuela's thanking me for the release is, that was just building a pipeline to do that. But, the amount of effort that goes into their monthly releases has been, huge. And I think the fact that they're able to do monthly releases on the Power Platform, none of these tools, or all of these tools, are built on the Power Platform. They're not part of the product. They're not built in code. They're built all with low code. They're all built in Canvas apps and flows and Dataverse tables, etc. And it's a pretty monumental effort to take a this large of a Power Platform implementation or solution and put it out into a public repo. So we've had to build some automation around that in order to do that. And the automation that we built was the ALM Accelerator. And it was intended originally for the CoE Starter Kit because the CoE Starter Kit needed better ALM practices, and in order to do what they do on a monthly basis and get releases out as quickly as they do, it couldn't be a manual effort. So we needed ALM. CoE Starter Kit needed ALM. And that's how the ALM Accelerator got started. But it also lends itself to the same sort of, it kind of continues the story of what the CoE Starter Kit does, right? The innovation backlog. So people submit ideas for things they want to build to automate their business. They get approval for that, or somebody says, yes, this is a great idea. Let's do it. Let's build it. They need environment, so they take the environment management part of the CoE Starter Kit and they provision a development environment for that thing to be built in. Then they realize, well, we don't want to just run this thing out of a development environment. We want to have a test environment. We want to have a prod environment, and we want to move things, around. And all of a sudden, you need an ALM process to do that. So the ALM Accelerator actually, it was built to support the CoE Starter Kit. It is now and becoming a part of the CoE Starter Kit and the whole story of how you manage, low code development within an organization. So that being said, this slide kind of, is just the overview of how the ALM Accelerator works and how it's intended to, enable makers to be able to do that process, to push things from a development environment, whether it be a single development environment for their solution, or if it may be a individual development environment. But essentially take that work, put it into source control, because source control should be the source of truth for for development work, even if you're working in a low-code platform, and then ultimately push those into a downstream environment, or push those apps into a downstream environment. Do some automated tests, potentially do some manual tests, do some validation along the way to make sure that, once you push that solution into a repo, if somebody goes in there and starts mucking with the XML or the JSON and that messes something up, then, package that up and make sure that it can be deployed into an environment and that the solution, is deployable. In addition to that, it also needs to handle a lot of things in the Power Platform that we didn't need to handle back in the Dynamics 365 days. So ALM was pretty stable for a while in Dynamics 365, being able to export plugins, plugin steps, the tables associated with that, or entities back then, being able to, essentially take most of what you did in a solution and push it to a new environment and have it in a working state. But the place that we're at right now with the, Power Apps and Flows and Power BI and Power, virtual agents and things like that, it's become much more complex, and the connectors is a big issue. So we now have this situation where it's not just export a solution imported into a downstream environment. There's additional steps that have to be taken, and the ALM Accelerator, what we've tried to do is focus on those additional steps and those things that aren't necessarily supported out of the box by the platform, and be able to take a solution, push it to a downstream environment, and have it in a working state in that downstream environment. And a lot of those gaps were in Power Platform stuff, Canvas apps, Power Automate flows, and things like that. So we've included that in the pipelines that back the ALM Accelerator. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. So some of you are familiar. I know Mike's on the call. There's a couple of people who are familiar with the ALM Accelerator for Advanced Makers, which is what we were calling this accelerator. Backstory is we have two accelerators. We've got an Advanced Maker Accelerator. We've got a For Maker Accelerator. The reason we have two of them is because we wanted to put something out, or the PowerCat team wanted to put something out in the CoE Starter Kit to show GitHub integration and GitHub workflows. The ALM Accelerator for Makers has GitHub workflow integration. It's going to go away. It's not going to be supported. It's sort of a reference implementation right now, and all of that GitHub implementation is going to be rolled into this accelerator. And so we renamed this from the ALM Accelerator for Advanced Makers to the ALM Accelerator for Power Platform. So it's going to have a couple of things. It's going to have Azure DevOps pipeline integration. It's going to have GitHub workflow integration. It's also going to have an advanced maker experience versus a maker experience. So the idea being that somebody who's kind of worked with the platform for a long time, say a Dynamics 365 type developer who's been working with the platform for a long time, has some buttons and or abilities in this app that somebody who's just a maker, somebody who works in HR who's building an app for HR and doesn't really understand ALM necessarily, will be able to use this app as well. And we'll kind of turn off some of the features based on who that persona is. And that's completely configurable on the back end. So I'm an administrator in this environment. This is the ALM Accelerator for Power Platform. As an administrator, I actually have access to these user settings or profiles. I have access to all of them. So I'm currently in the Advanced Maker Experience. If I switch to the Maker Experience, you'll see some things change, some things go away, things we don't necessarily want to allow a maker to do, like delete a solution or import a solution, or they don't understand what a commit is. And a commit's kind of that's a Git term that an advanced maker or a developer might understand, but a maker may not. So if I switch to the Maker Experience, it just says save solution, right? So you can customize these user settings dependent on who's interacting with the system. And we've removed the import solution and the delete solution for this particular experience. Now, because I'm an administrator, I can actually see all of these and I can switch between them. But if we swap over to Nat, who's not an administrator, Nat's been assigned a profile, and Nat doesn't see that drop down. Nat just gets what she gets in her experience. So as a maker, and I'm going to work in, let's say, I'm going to work in the advanced maker experience for now. But as a maker, I come in here, I've been given access to this tool for me to be able to save my solution, commit my solutions, and deploy my solutions. I can go ahead and click on Manage Solutions. That's going to drop me directly into the solution experience if it comes up. Oh, that's interesting. There it goes. And the idea here is that we're kind of setting people up for success, makers up for success, whether they're advanced makers or regular makers. This would be sort of their dashboard for going and creating apps in Power Platform. We want them to create apps in solutions because the ALM process is driven by solutions and will be driven by solutions going forward in the platform. So we want to give them a way to set themselves up for success and build things in a solution initially so that they can actually deploy. Because as we all know, I can come over here, I can click apps, and I can just start creating an app here, and it has no association with the solution. Therefore, it's not ever going to be able to be deployed, as part of a package. So I'll come back here. I'm going to create a new solution. This is going to be just so it shows up at the top of the list, solution. That looks good. Pick a publisher. So we've got PowerCat here. Create that. All right, so we've got our solution. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add something to the solution. I'm going to add a new Canvas app. We got one. All right, so all right. Skip that. We'll just add a label here. DC Power Platform. There we go. All right, that looks good. Go ahead and save this. All right. And let's add one more thing here. Actually, we want a connector. Or actually, let's build a flow, and we'll put a connection reference in here as well. Let's create a new flow. Automation, Cloudflow. Let's say it's an instant Cloudflow. And this would be all right. We'll say this is a manual. Good enough. And let's add a SharePoint connector in. And this would be list items. Get items. Let's try that. All right. Sure, that looks good. So we can save that. All right. All right, while that's saving. So we've got our new solution here. This wasn't here before. Our Power Platform DC solution. So this is refreshed while we were away. The first thing you have to do when you come in here is choose a profile. So as an administrator, I have the ability to create a profile, and a profile is simply a way to specify what the Azure DevOps organization and project are, what repository we were going to be source controlling this into, and what branch is our target for a pull request, or essentially what our sort of working branch, or our the branch that everybody kind of pulls into will be. So I have a couple of them set up here. So I've got CoE Starter Kit. These can be assigned based on your user settings. So if you have a user setting that you share, for instance, like I shared with Nat, I shared a user setting record with her. Those profiles can be associated to that user setting, and the user only sees the profiles that are associated to them. So let's look at that real quick, what that looks like. So here's our user setting. So this is the advanced maker experience. You can see we've got user functions. So there's certain things we can allow and disallow. We can turn these off. For example, if I say this is not allowed in the advanced maker experience, if I refresh this, you'll see that the import solution that was up here kind of goes away. So you can configure these as many as you like and assign them or share them with users in the system. And you can share them with teams, or you can share them with individual users. But the profiles are associated with these user settings. So I can see all of these profiles because I happen to be in this advanced maker experience. If I come back here, and that was, yeah. So if I come back here, I click choose a profile, I see all of those. If I happen to be in the maker experience and I click choose a profile, you can see I can only see 2 here. So it's based on how or what experience that you're in, which profiles you get provisioned. And that's useful for situations where, like, for example, you've got an HR department, and the HR department commits all of their solutions or source controls all of their solutions in a specific project in Azure DevOps and or a specific repo, and they always deploy to the same production environment and the same test environment. So you can kind of bifurcate where people are allowed to push things, where people are allowed to source control things. And if you have an accounting department that has a different production environment, or a different production, or a different project and repo in Azure DevOps, then you can assign those profiles out based on the roles in the system. We happen to have ours, split up by solution. You could do it that way as well. You could create a per solution profile. It's configurable, based on whatever the scenario is within the organization. But I'm going to choose a profile here, and I'm going to choose the CoE Starter Kit. You can see my organization is P Platform, Project, Repository. I'm using solution branches here. I can specify a branch, but in this case, what use solution branches does is it creates a branch specific to my solution, and that is where everybody who does development on this solution would ultimately push their changes. So it's going to create a branch in Azure DevOps for me specifically, for my development branch, but it's also going to create a branch specific for the solution, so that when I'm done with all of my commits, when I'm done with saving my solution and I'm ready to deploy it, it's going to deploy it into the solution branch that gets created. And then down here we have deployment environments. These are configurable. This is kind of the default validation environment, a test environment, and a production environment. You can have as many or as little environments as you like, but this is sort of the default setup for the ALM Accelerator. And the validation environment is essentially an environment where when you create a pull request, it will build and deploy to that environment and just verify that you have a deployable solution. Test environment is once that pull request gets approved, it gets pushed into test, gets tested there. Ultimately, you do a pull request for into main, and main, once it's deployed into, or once it's approved into main, then it gets pushed into production. All right, so what I didn't point out is that before we select a profile, none of these buttons are lit up. So you really can't do anything with a solution that doesn't have a profile. So you can see kind of down here, all of these things are turned off because no profile has been associated. So you have to select a profile before you start to commit and do deployments. I'm going to go ahead and commit this. I'm going to say saving my work for the day. And it's going to automatically specify a branch specifically for me. So I've got a working development and branch for Johanna L. This is going to be based on main initially because there is no solution branch for this. But we'll see how that works, downstream. So it's going to be based on main. It's going to create a working branch for me. Part of the pipeline that runs behind this will actually create the solution branch associated with my solution. Something that's new for those of you who have used ALM Accelerator for advanced makers before, this show advance, this is also a setting on the deployment user settings. So there's an option to allow advanced deploy or advanced promote here. So you can turn that on and off. But what shows up for the maker, if we switch to the maker experience and click Save Solution, is just this. So your advanced maker has the ability to specify a branch, source branch, target branch. They have the ability to do some things that the maker, or in this case, the experience that we set up, or the user setting that we set up, to do things that the maker can't. But what's ultimately happening is the same thing in the background, right? So the maker just sees this. Okay, I want to save the solution. I'll put my message in here and I'll continue on. What the advanced maker sees is, exactly what branch is being created, where it's going to, and those sort of details. This bypass prepare is just is the ability to kind of toggle off prepare and commit solution. So once you're ready to commit, you hit prepare. The first thing that you have to do, if you don't bypass prepare, which is another setting on the user settings that you can toggle on and off, the first thing that you have to do is go in and specify connection references, environment variables, app sharing, and component ownership in the downstream environment. So these are those things that I was talking about that are not part of the solution package, but are part of the Power Platform that are required in order to deploy a solution in a downstream environment. So in this case, I don't have any connection references here. I don't have any environment variables, but I do have an app, right? So we created an app. I can share that with an AAD group. So let's say we'll share it with this group. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Let's go back to that. So I want to share it with this group. You have the ability to filter groups if you have a lot of groups in your AAD tenant. You also have the ability to kind of drill down into this. So I can drill into this as Johanna and actually see who's associated with that group. So these are the people that are going to be shared with in the downstream environment. I can set the permission, view, edit, view and share, etc. Component ownership. So these are all the flows. If there is more than one flow in my solution, it will show me all of these. I can specify a Dataverse user to own that flow in the downstream environment. And all this is, is that Christy Kripe? That's weird. But all of these sort of settings are to enable, like, connection references and environment variables, those sort of things. If you've imported a solution that has those in them manually, the platform prompts you for those when you import them manually. But in order to do this in a headless way, in order to do this, automated, you actually have to specify those things ahead of time. Those create a configuration file that's applied to the import solution task in Azure DevOps, and ultimately it wires that stuff up for you in those environments. So you would have to repeat this for each of your environments. This is the validation. We'd go to the test environment. We'd have to set up app sharing in the test environment, etc. So we'll save and close from there. We know that's our branch. This is what it's based on. And we click commit solution. So at this point, it's going to kick off a pipeline in Azure DevOps that will download the solution. It will unpack it. It will take all of that configuration information that we supplied. It will put it into a deployment settings file, and you'll end up with a branch in Azure DevOps that has all of your solution information associated with it to be deployed at a later time. So I set up one earlier, this test 112. We can kind of look at what that looks like when it finishes, because it does take a while. You can see this actually took 7 minutes to finish, and I don't want you guys to have to sit and watch that. But this test 112 actually created a branch in here. Search for it. Here's my solution. So your solution will be unpacked into a folder as well as the branch. We've got test 112 up, and in this case, these are the pipelines that got created. So let me go back. There's actually a Johanna test 112. So let's go back. Branches. There it is. So Johanna test 112. There's our solution package and our config. Let's see what's in here. There wasn't anything specific in there, but we did have an app in here. So here's our group canvas configuration sharing. If we look at our solution package, this was a very simple canvas app as well. So we look at screen 1. We actually have the source code for our canvas app, and we're using the PA SOPA unpack in Pack CLI to unpack canvas apps from their native MS app file format into source control. So we have canvas apps unpacked. We've also got solution, all of our solution dependencies, customizations, etc., in source control. And we can search through these. We can compare. We can do resolve merge conflicts and things like that at the sort of source code level as we develop these applications and these solutions, and we push, or as multiple developers push into it. The only other thing I want to show is, so once that's committed, we've got our branch in there, we create a deployment, and a deployment in this tool can be one of two things. It can be a pull request, or it can kick off a pipeline directly, and it can be like an environment approval type approval in Azure DevOps. But in this case, we have a pull request. So the pull request was to push my Johanna branch into this solution branch, and you can see that it actually kicks off a validation build, which deploys to a validation environment. It builds the solution. It verifies, like I said, that this is a valid solution, and it can be pushed into downstream environments. And all of these pipelines now, which it wasn't the case before, all of those pipelines are generated automatically when you export a solution. So if you have a new solution, like we just kind of showed, it will go out and create the deployment pipelines as well on your behalf when you export that solution. So that's about it. And we're at time, about 2 minutes over. So yeah, any questions, I'm happy to answer, and I'm sure Manuela and Mark are as well. So thank you, guys.